I'm Vada, 29 years old, and still remember how my mom's words shattered our family Christmas dinner. "You're dead to me," she said, her voice cold as the winter outside. The table fell silent. Everyone stared at their plates as my heart stopped beating for a second. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I walked away, completely cutting all ties. What followed shocked not only her, but everyone who knew us. Before I share what happened that night, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. Growing up in Millfield, a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, I learned early that appearance mattered more than happiness to my mother, Catherine. She controlled everything in our household, from what clothes we wore to what activities we participated in. Nothing I ever did was good enough. "Stand up straighter, Vada. Fix your hair, Vada. Why can't you be more like your sister, Vada?" Her words followed me everywhere, constant reminders of my inadequacy. My father, Thomas, was kind but perpetually passive. He'd shoot me sympathetic glances across the dinner table when my mother criticized my grades or appearance, but he never intervened. "Your mother just wants what's best for you," he'd say afterward, patting my shoulder awkwardly. But what she wanted was perfection, and I was frustratingly human. Amelia, my younger sister by 3 years, somehow managed to meet every impossible standard. She played piano, beautifully maintained straight A's, and never talked back. "Look how nicely Amelia sits at the table," my mother would say while shooting pointed glances at my apparently incorrect posture. Sometimes I wondered if we were actually related, or if I had been swapped at the hospital. I tried everything to please my mother throughout elementary school. I joined ballet despite hating it. I practiced penmanship for hours. I wore the frilly dresses she bought me even when other kids made fun of me. Nothing worked. "You could try harder, Vada," she'd say with that disappointed sigh I came to dread. Things deteriorated when I turned 15 and started forming my own opinions. I wanted to try out for the school newspaper instead of debate club. Journalism. "That's not a real career, Vada. Lawyers make something of themselves." When I dyed a streak of my hair purple, she didn't speak to me for 3 days, then made me pay to have it fixed at her salon. College was my first taste of freedom. Attending State University 3 hours away meant weekend visits became monthly, then only on major holidays. I changed my major from pre-law to journalism without telling her until it was too late to switch back. The phone call when she found out left my roommate wide-eyed and me in tears, but for once I stood my ground. "You're throwing away your potential," she said. "We're not paying for you to waste our money." But my father secretly continued helping with tuition, telling me, "Just do well, kiddo. That's all that matters." After graduation, against my better judgment, I took a job at the Millfield Gazette. The position offered good experience, and honestly, I couldn't afford to move anywhere else with my student loan payments. Moving back meant Sunday dinners at my parents' house and daily texts from my mother about job openings at law firms that weren't too picky about credentials. Then I met Lucas at a community festival I was covering for the paper. He was photographing the event, tall, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that immediately attracted me. We started dating, and for the first time I felt truly seen and valued just for being myself. When I introduced him to my parents, my mother took one look at his tattoos and his career as a freelance photographer and decided he wasn't good enough. "He's not stable, Vada," she said later on the phone. "You need someone who can provide for you properly." The fact that I provided for myself just fine seemed irrelevant to her. As Thanksgiving passed and Christmas approached, the tension between us grew. Every conversation became a battleground with my relationship with Lucas at the center. Little did I know that the coming holiday would be the breaking point that would change everything. The first week of December brought with it a familiar sense of dread that settled in my stomach like a stone. Christmas at the Reynolds household was never about joy or celebration, it was about performance. My mother transformed into a holiday dictator, orchestrating every detail from the precisely arranged ornaments on the tree to the mandatory color-coordinated outfits for family photos. "So will Lucas be joining us for Christmas dinner?" My mother's voice through the phone sounded casual, but I recognized the trap. Yes, I was planning on bringing him, I replied, keeping my tone even. He doesn't have family in the area. There was a pointed silence. You know how important family tradition is, Vada. Christmas dinner is for family. He's important to me, Mom. I'd like him to be included. I squeezed the phone tighter. Well, I suppose if you insist on bringing your photographer friend, at least make sure he wears something appropriate. No jeans or those awful boots he always has on. She said photographer, the same way someone might say convicted felon. After hanging up, I sat on my couch and tried to calm my racing heart. Lucas found me there and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. That bad, huh? He asked, kissing the top of my head. She's going to make this miserable, I warned him. You don't have to come. I'd understand. He looked me in the eyes. I'm not letting you face her alone. We're a team, remember. The mall was packed with holiday shoppers when I went to buy gifts the next weekend. I stared at an expensive handbag my mother had hinted at wanting, calculating whether I could afford it after my recent car repair. Even though my budget screamed no, I bought it anyway, knowing a less expensive gift would just become evidence of my failing as a daughter. For my father, I found a first edition of his favorite detective novel. For Amelia, the designer scarf she'd mentioned. Lucas helped me pick everything out, gently steering me away from spending beyond my means. Your worth isn't measured by how much you spend, Vada, he reminded me. Amelia called while I was wrapping gifts that evening. Mom's on the warpath about Lucas coming to dinner, she warned. Maybe just this once come alone. Keep the peace for Christmas. Why should I be the only one compromising? Why doesn't she ever have to change? I asked, frustration building. Because she's Mom, Amelia said simply. You know how she is. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Maybe it is, I replied quietly, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. That night, Lucas and I had a long conversation about family dynamics and setting boundaries. He sat across from me at my tiny kitchen table, his hands wrapped around mine. Your mother's behavior isn't normal or healthy, Vada. You know that, right? Parents are supposed to support their children, not tear them down. I know, I whispered, tears forming. But she's still my mother. And you're an amazing, accomplished adult woman who deserves respect, he countered. I'll support whatever decision you make about Christmas, but remember you're allowed to have boundaries. Christmas Eve arrived with a text from my mother listing the schedule for the following day, including when we should arrive and what dishes I should bring. I baked the required sweet potato casserole according to her precise recipe, fighting back resentment with each measured ingredient. That night I dreamed my mother was chasing me through our childhood home, scissors in hand, trying to cut away parts of me she found unacceptable. I woke up gasping, Lucas's arm tightening around me protectively. Just a nightmare, I assured him, but we both knew it wasn't just a dream. It was my subconscious processing 29 years of never being enough. The morning of Christmas Day, I stood in front of my closet deliberating over what to wear. I finally chose a green sweater dress that was festive enough for my mother's standards, but still felt like me. Lucas wore a button-down shirt and slacks, his one concession to my mother's expectations, though he refused to remove his small earring. Ready? He asked, car keys in hand. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders. As ready as I'll ever be. Let's just try to get through this with our dignity intact. The drive to my parents' suburban home felt like a journey to the executioner. Christmas lights twinkled mockingly from neighboring houses as Lucas parked in the driveway. I clutched the perfectly wrapped gifts and casserole dish like shields. Remember, we can leave any time you want, Lucas whispered, squeezing my hand before we rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door, her practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes. She wore an elegant red dress with a pearl necklace I recognized as her own mother's. Her gaze swept critically over my outfit before landing on Lucas with obvious disapproval. Merry Christmas, Mom, I said, leaning in for the obligatory cheek kiss. Vada, dear. And Lucas, how nice. She stepped aside to let us in. Everyone's in the living room. Vada, the casserole, goes in the kitchen. The house was immaculately decorated as always. A 12-foot Christmas tree dominated the living room, adorned with matching gold and burgundy ornaments, arranged with mathematical precision. No homemade childhood ornaments or sentimental items disrupted her perfect aesthetic. My father rose from his armchair when we entered, genuine warmth in his smile. "There's my girl, Merry Christmas, sweetheart." He hugged me tightly, then extended a hand to Lucas. "Good to see you again, son." Amelia sat primly on the couch beside her boyfriend Greg, a banking executive my mother adored. "Hey, sis," she said, her eyes communicating silent sympathy. We exchanged gifts with forced cheerfulness. My mother made a show of loving the expensive handbag, though I caught her checking the label when she thought I wasn't looking. My father genuinely treasured the book, while Amelia gushed over the scarf. Lucas had thoughtfully brought a bottle of wine and homemade chocolates that my mother accepted with a tight smile. "Dinner's almost ready," my mother announced. "Vada, come help me in the kitchen." In the kitchen, she immediately began critiquing my casserole. "The marshmallows aren't browned evenly. Did you follow my recipe exactly?" "Yes, Mom," I lied, having reduced the sugar by half. She stirred the gravy with unnecessary force. "I noticed you've gained a little weight since Thanksgiving. Those journalist jobs must keep you very sedentary." I bit my tongue, focusing on arranging dinner rolls in the basket exactly as she preferred. We worked in tense silence until everything was ready. At the dining table, I noticed she'd seated Lucas at the opposite end from me, between my father and a decorative poinsettia that partially blocked him from view. The calculated insult wasn't lost on either of us, but Lucas caught my eye and gave me a reassuring smile. My father valiantly tried to maintain pleasant conversation as we passed dishes around. "Vada's been writing some excellent articles lately. I saved that piece on the Historical Society you did last month." "That's wonderful, Thomas," my mother replied without enthusiasm. "Though I still think Vada would have made an excellent attorney. The Petersons' daughter just made partner at her firm and she's only 32. "Actually," Lucas interjected, "Vada's editor mentioned she's being considered for a feature writer position. Her human interest stories have been getting a lot of positive reader feedback." My mother's smile tightened. "How nice, though I imagine the pay for that sort of thing is still quite modest." The conversation shifted to Amelia's recent promotion and Greg's investment portfolio. I pushed food around my plate, my appetite diminishing with each passive-aggressive comment from my mother. "So what are your plans for the new year?" my father asked, clearly trying to include Lucas and me in the conversation. Before I could answer carefully, Lucas took my hand visibly on the table. "Actually, we've been talking about some exciting possibilities. There's a media company in Portland that's interested in Vada's work, and they've got connections to some major publications I've wanted to shoot for." The table went silent. My mother set down her fork with deliberate slowness. "Portland, Oregon. That's across the country," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "It's a great opportunity, Mom," I said, drawing strength from Lucas's hand in mine. "Nothing's finalized yet, but we're seriously considering it." She repeated. "So you're making life decisions based on what this photographer wants now?" "We're making decisions together," I corrected her. "As partners." "Partners," she scoffed. "You barely know him. What about your family? What about your responsibilities here?" "I'm 29 years old. Mom, my responsibility is to build my own life. A life that conveniently takes you thousands of miles away from your family, after all we've sacrificed for you." Her voice rose slightly. Lucas squeezed my hand. "Mrs. Reynolds Vada loves you all very much. This isn't about leaving family behind. It's about pursuing career opportunities that aren't available here." "I don't recall asking for your input," she snapped at Lucas before turning back to me. "This is exactly the kind of impulsive, poorly thought-out decision I've come to expect from you, Vada. First journalism instead of law, and now running off across the country with a man who has no stability or prospects." "Mom, that's enough," I said, feeling heat rise in my face. "No, it's not enough. Look at Amelia and Greg. They have a plan. They have respectable careers. They understand family obligations." She gestured toward my sister, who looked uncomfortably at her plate. Why can't you make sensible choices for once in your life? Because they're not my choices, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. They're yours. They've always been yours. Don't take that tone with me. Not in my house on Christmas Day. I'm not taking a tone. I'm stating a fact. I'm not going to live my life to fulfill your expectations anymore. The tension in the room was suffocating. My father cleared his throat. Catherine, perhaps we should— No, Thomas. It's time someone told her the truth. This rebellious phase has gone on long enough. She fixed me with a cold stare. If you leave for Portland with him, don't expect anything from us. No support, no help when it inevitably falls apart. We don't need your help, I replied quietly. You ungrateful— She stopped, composing herself with visible effort. After everything we've done for you, the education we paid for, the opportunities we've given you. I'm grateful for those things, Mom, but they don't entitle you to control my life forever. If you do this, she said, her voice trembling with anger, if you throw away everything we've built for you here, then as far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me. The words hung in the air like icicles. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My father stared at his plate. Amelia's eyes widened in shock. Even Greg looked uncomfortable. I carefully placed my napkin beside my half-eaten dinner. Then I guess there's nothing more to say. I stood up, surprisingly calm despite the earthquake inside me. Lucas, I think it's time to go. Lucas rose immediately. Thank you for dinner, he said politely to no one in particular. We collected our coats in silence. My father moved as if to follow us, but my mother's glare kept him seated. As we walked to the door, I turned back once. Merry Christmas, everyone, I said softly, then closed the door behind us. In the car, the silence persisted until we were several blocks away. Then the tears came hot and fast as the reality of what had just happened washed over me. I've got you, Lucas whispered, pulling over to take me in his arms. I've got you. That night, as Christmas lights blinked through my apartment window, I blocked my family's numbers on my phone and removed them from all social media. It was the beginning of a clean break I never imagined making, but somehow knew was long overdue. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur of contradictory emotions. One moment I felt liberated, the next overwhelmed with grief. My phone remained blissfully silent from family calls, though I knew it was because I'd blocked their numbers, not because they were respecting my boundaries. Physical symptoms manifested almost immediately. My sleep became fragmented with vivid dreams of childhood. I developed a persistent knot in my shoulder that no amount of stretching would release. Some mornings I woke with my jaw aching from grinding my teeth all night. Are you absolutely sure about cutting them off completely? Lucas asked gently as he massaged my shoulders one evening. I'll support whatever you decide, but this is a big step. I've been dying by inches my entire life trying to be someone I'm not, I replied, wincing as he found a particularly tense spot. It's like I've been holding my breath for 29 years and I finally need to breathe. Lucas had his own family complications to navigate. His parents lived across the country but called frequently after hearing about our Christmas dinner exit. My mom thinks I've dragged you into some kind of family-destroying rebellion, he admitted after one such call. They don't understand how toxic your mother is. No one does unless they've lived it, I said. The practical aspects of separation proved challenging. I'd been on my parents' cell phone family plan to save money. My health insurance came through a connection of my father's. My mother still had a spare key to my apartment for emergencies. Each tie required careful severing. The Christmas gifts I'd received sat unopened in a closet. I couldn't bear to look at them, but couldn't bring myself to throw them away either. I returned the unworn sweater my mother had given me last year and used the store credit to buy a new phone on my own plan. My father's birthday fell on January 3rd. For 30 years, I'd never missed calling him or sending a card. This year, as the day approached, I felt physically ill thinking about breaking the tradition, but remained resolved. Independence required consistency. The day came and went. Later that week, I discovered my sister had left a voicemail from an unknown number that had bypassed my blocks. "What you're doing is incredibly selfish, Vada." Amelia's voice was thick with accusation. "Dad was heartbroken when you didn't call on his birthday. Mom's barely eating. I'm the one dealing with the fallout of your little tantrum. Call them and apologize before this gets even more out of hand." I deleted the message without responding, then blocked the new number. At work, focusing became a challenge. My editor noticed my distraction during meetings. "Everything okay, Vada? Your last few pieces have been good, but not quite up to your usual standard." "Just some personal stuff I'm working through," I explained vaguely. "I'll get back on track." He nodded sympathetically. "Take care of yourself. Good writers need to process their own stories sometimes." His kindness nearly broke me. I'd grown so accustomed to criticism that genuine support felt foreign, almost suspicious. Was there a hidden agenda I wasn't seeing? With Lucas's encouragement, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Madison specialized in family trauma and boundary setting. Our first session left me emotionally drained, but with a strange sense of validation. "What you're describing is a classic pattern of emotional control and manipulation," she explained. "Your decision to create distance isn't selfish, it's self-preservation." 2 weeks into January, a thick cream envelope arrived in my mailbox, my mother's distinctive stationery. I recognized her perfect handwriting immediately. The letter inside was 4 pages long, alternating between guilt trips, "After all we've sacrificed, martyrdom," "Your father's blood pressure is concerning the doctor," and thinly veiled threats, "Family inheritance decisions need to be reconsidered." Not once did it contain an apology or acknowledgement of her words at Christmas. I placed the letter in a folder labeled Family Communications that Dr. Madison had suggested keeping for perspective, but I wrote no response. New Year's Eve arrived, and Lucas surprised me with reservations at a small, elegant restaurant overlooking the river. I wore a sparkly blue dress I'd bought specifically because my mother would have hated it too short, too bright, too attention-seeking. "To new beginnings," Lucas toasted at midnight, clinking his champagne glass against mine as fireworks exploded over the water. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. To finally writing my own story. The first month of separation had been excruciating, but as January ended, I began experiencing moments of genuine peace, brief intervals, where I didn't feel the weight of disapproval shadowing my every decision. They were small victories, but significant ones. By February, something unexpected was happening. Without the constant drain of trying to please my unpleasable mother, my creative energy flourished. My writing became sharper, more authentic. My editor noticed immediately. "Whatever personal stuff you've been working through, it's transformed your writing," he commented, holding up my latest feature article. "This piece on the community garden project has real heart. I'm submitting it for regional awards consideration." The praise felt genuine, not the backhanded compliments I'd grown up with. "You could have done better if you'd tried harder, Vada." Or, "It's good, but imagine if you'd applied yourself earlier." My relationship with Lucas deepened as we began seriously planning our Portland move. We spent evenings researching neighborhoods, comparing cost of living, and reaching out to professional connections. Without my mother's negative voice in my ear, I could see our relationship clearly healthy, supportive, and balanced. "You smile more now," Lucas observed one evening as we cooked dinner together in my apartment. "Not just the polite smile you used to wear, real smiles that reach your eyes." I paused, spatula in hand. "I feel more like myself than I ever have. It's like I've been playing a role my whole life, and now I'm finally off stage." New friendships blossomed too. I joined a writers group that met weekly at the local bookstore. These connections, based on shared interests rather than obligation, felt refreshingly uncomplicated. Sophia, a poet with bright pink hair and infectious laugh, quickly became a close friend, something my mother would have disapproved of entirely. "Family is who treats you like family," Sophia told me over coffee one day after I'd shared parts of my story. "Biology is just a starting point, not a life sentence." In March, I received a job offer from Portland Media Group earlier than expected and with a better salary than I'd hoped. Lucas had already secured freelance commitments from 2 magazines there. The pieces were falling into place for our move in May. That same week, my mother escalated her attempts to reestablish control. My aunt called to check in, transparently fishing for information. A family friend coincidentally ran into me at the grocery store mentioning how concerned everyone was. My mother even had the pastor from her church call to discuss the importance of honoring thy father and mother. I maintained polite but firm boundaries with each interaction. Dr. Madison had helped me develop scripts. I appreciate your concern, but this is a private family matter, and I'm not comfortable discussing this, but thank you for caring. Each successful boundary reinforced my resolve. In late March, my father made his first independent contact attempt. A text from an unknown number simply read, "It's Dad. Just wanted to say I miss you, kiddo. No pressure to respond." The message shattered my carefully constructed composure. I showed it to Dr. Madison during our next session. "What do you want to do about this?" she asked, her tone neutral. Part of me wants to respond, "He's not the problem, not really. He's just never stood up to her." I sighed. But another part knows that any crack in the door will become a pathway for my mother. "Those are valid concerns," she acknowledged. "Remember, healing isn't linear, and boundaries can evolve as you do. Whatever you decide doesn't have to be permanent." I ultimately decided not to respond yet, but saved his number separately from my blocked list. It was a small concession to the possibility of a future relationship on new terms. April brought unexpected liberation in surprising ways. I cut my hair short after a lifetime of my mother insisting long hair was more feminine and appropriate. I applied for a passport, planning a weekend trip to Montreal with Lucas to celebrate my upcoming birthday, my first ever international travel that my mother would have discouraged as frivolous. I reconnected with my childhood friend Jasmine, whom my mother had deemed from the wrong sort of family when we were teenagers. She had become a successful graphic designer and laughed when I apologized for our lost years of friendship. "Water under the bridge," she assured me. "Some people just can't stand not being the center of their kids' universe. My mom was the same way until I moved to Chicago for 5 years. Distance can be therapeutic for everyone." The approaching 1-year anniversary of my grandmother's death, my mother's mother brought unexpected grief. Grandma Rose had been kind but distant, clearly the template from which my mother had learned her parenting style. I found myself wondering about this generational inheritance of emotional coldness, this legacy of conditional love. In late April, Lucas surprised me with a ring not ostentatious but unique and perfectly suited to my taste. We sat on the riverbank at sunset when he asked me to marry him. "Yes," I answered without hesitation, though complicated emotions followed. Who would walk me down the aisle? Would I forever feel the absence of family on what should be the happiest day of my life? Later that night, Lucas held me as I cried, not for what I had, but for what I'd never had, a mother who could simply be happy for my happiness. "We'll create our own family traditions," he promised. "Our children will never question if they're enough." The mention of future children, little ones who would never know the weight of constantly seeking approval that could never be earned, solidified my commitment to maintaining boundaries. Breaking the cycle mattered more than temporary peace. As May approached with our moving date, I felt stronger and more certain in my decision than ever before. The transformation wasn't just emotional, it was tangible in every aspect of my life. My posture had improved. My chronic headaches had virtually disappeared. My voice no longer automatically shifted to a higher, more pleasing tone when discussing my opinions or decisions. I was becoming the author of my own life story, not just a character in someone else's. 6 months after the Christmas dinner confrontation, my carefully constructed boundary wall faced its most serious test. I was interviewing the new elementary school principal at her office when the receptionist interrupted with wide eyes. "Ms. Reynolds, there's a woman in the lobby insisting on seeing you right away. She says she's your mother." My stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry about this interruption," I told the principal. Would you excuse me for just a moment? In the school lobby stood my mother, impeccably dressed as always, but noticeably thinner than I remembered. Her eyes, so like mine, widened when she saw me taking in my new haircut and confident stance. Vada, finally. Do you know how many places I've had to go looking for you? This ridiculous situation has gone on long enough. Her voice carried through the lobby, causing parents and children to stare. Mom, I'm working. This is completely inappropriate. I kept my voice low, professional. Inappropriate. What's inappropriate is cutting off your family for months without a word. Your father is beside himself with worry. Is this about Portland? Because we can discuss that rationally if you just come home. This isn't the time or place, I insisted. I'm conducting an interview for the paper. Always the job first now, isn't it? That's his influence. She practically spat the word his, clearly meaning Lucas. You've changed and not for the better. When I didn't respond, she raised her voice further. Are you really going to stand there and ignore your own mother after everything I've done for you? The school secretary had quietly called the resource officer, who approached with professional calm. Ma'am, I need to ask you to lower your voice or take this conversation outside. This is a place of learning. Do you know who I am? I'm on the hospital board. My husband is... Mom, stop, I cut in firmly. Officer, I apologize for the disruption. This is my mother, but I didn't invite her here. I need to return to my interview. You can't just dismiss me like some stranger, my mother hissed. Ma'am, you need to leave now, the officer stated, or I'll have to escort you out. The look of shock on my mother's face when she realized her social standing wouldn't help her here would have been satisfying if it weren't so sad. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, her carefully cultivated image of perfection was publicly cracking. This isn't over, Vada, she said as the officer guided her toward the door. Family doesn't just disappear because you're having a tantrum. I returned to the principal's office, hands shaking, but voice steady as I apologized for the interruption. The principal was gracious. Family can be complicated. Take a moment if you need it. That evening, my father called from his private number. This time I answered. Vada, I'm sorry about today. He began, sounding exhausted. Your mother shouldn't have done that. No, she shouldn't have. I agreed. Is she okay? She looked thin. He sighed heavily. She's not doing well, if I'm being honest. Her doctor has her on anxiety medication. She had a pretty serious panic attack last month when she saw your engagement announcement in the paper. The announcement. I'd forgotten the paper automatically published engagement notices in the community section. I didn't think about her seeing that, I admitted. She's not handling any of this well. Last week at your cousin Bethany's baby shower, she broke down completely when someone asked about you. Just started crying and couldn't stop. Had to leave early. A complicated mix of emotions swirled through me, concerned guilt but also a firm resolve not to be manipulated. I'm sorry she's struggling, Dad, but her words and actions have consequences. I know, kiddo. His voice softened. I'm not calling to make you feel guilty, I miss you, and I'm worried about both of you. I consulted with Dr. Madison about the incident the next day. Your mother's escalation isn't surprising, she explained. When usual control tactics fail, there's often an extinction burst, more extreme behavior to try to regain control. Your steady boundary maintenance is clearly working even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Should I be concerned about her health? Dad says she's on anxiety medication now. Your compassion shows your health, not dysfunction, Dr. Madison replied. But remember, you didn't cause her anxiety. Her inability to control you is triggering her own unresolved issues. That's for her to work on, perhaps with her own therapist. 2 days later, Amelia called more angry than I'd ever heard her. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? Mom collapsed at church yesterday. Everyone's talking about it. Your selfishness is literally making her sick. I'm sorry she's not feeling well, I said carefully. But I'm not responsible for her emotional reactions. That's such bull. You know exactly what you're doing, flaunting your engagement in the paper when you knew she'd see it. moving across the country. It's like you're trying to hurt her deliberately. I'm living my life, Amelia. That's not an attack on anyone. Well, your living your life is destroying hers. Hope you're happy with yourself. She hung up before I could respond. The next blow came from an unexpected direction. Lucas's mother called him concerned about what she'd heard through mutual acquaintances. Apparently, your mother has been telling people at her country club that Vada has substance abuse issues, he reported grimly after the call. That's supposedly why you've cut contact, because they were trying to get you into rehab. The blatant lie stunned me. I never imagined she'd go that far. My mom doesn't believe it, he assured me. But she thought we should know what's being said. The final revelation of that tumultuous week came when my former high school English teacher, Mrs. Bennett, approached me at the farmer's market. She'd been a mentor during my teenage years, one of the few adults who'd encouraged my writing. "Veda, I've wanted to speak with you for weeks," she said, pulling me aside between vegetable stands. "Your mother's friend Caroline has been sharing some concerns at our book club, and it doesn't sound right to me. I wanted to hear from you directly." "What has she been saying?" I asked, though I could guess. "That you've fallen under the influence of a controlling boyfriend who's isolated you from family and friends. That you need help, but won't accept it." Mrs. Bennett's kind eyes showed her skepticism. "I've known you since you were 14. You've always had a strong moral compass and good judgment. Thank you for not believing it without talking to me," I said, genuinely touched by her loyalty. "Some people can't distinguish between control and love," she said simply. "Your mother always struck me as someone who struggled with that distinction." That night, Lucas found me at the kitchen table writing furiously in a notebook. "What's that?" he asked, setting down take-out dinner bags. "A letter to my mother I'll never send," I explained. "Dr. Madison suggested it as a way to process everything." "Is it helping?" I considered the question. "Yes, actually. It's clarifying. For the first time, I can see how her behavior fits a pattern that was never about me at all. I was just a convenient target for her own insecurities." Later that week, the most unexpected ally emerged. My mother's longtime friend Susan, a quiet woman who'd always seemed completely aligned with my mother's perspectives, emailed me. "I've known your mother for 25 years, she wrote. "She's my dearest friend, but I've watched her relationship with you become increasingly destructive. What she said to you at Christmas was unforgivable. While I hope reconciliation is possible someday, please know that some of us understand your need for distance. Take care of yourself, Vada." The email was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning swimmer, validation from someone within my mother's inner circle that I wasn't crazy, selfish, or wrong to protect myself. I saved it in a special folder, returning to it whenever doubt crept in. As we packed our apartment for the Portland move, these events strengthened my resolve. My mother's escalating behavior confirmed that boundaries were necessary, not optional. The sympathy and understanding from unexpected sources reassured me that objective observers could see the dysfunction clearly. Most importantly, I was learning that standing firm didn't make me cruel or heartless. It made me healthy. And that health was worth protecting, no matter how uncomfortable the process. 1 year after the fateful Christmas dinner, I sat on the balcony of our Portland apartment watching the winter sun set behind Mount Hood. The past 12 months had brought more growth pain and self-discovery than all my previous 29 years combined. Our move to Portland had been the fresh start we'd hoped for. My position at Portland Media Group had recently expanded to include editorial oversight of their online platform. Lucas's photography business had flourished, with his work appearing in several national publications. We'd built a small but genuine circle of friends who knew us only as we were now, not shadowed by family expectations. "Hard to believe it's been a year," Lucas said, joining me with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He wrapped a blanket around my shoulders against the December chill. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," I admitted. "Other times it feels like another lifetime." The most significant developments had come from unexpected directions. 2 months after our move, my father called with surprising news. "Your mother has started seeing a therapist," he said, his voice containing equal parts shock and hope. Her doctor finally convinced her after another anxiety attack. Really, that doesn't sound like Mom at all. The woman who'd once declared therapy for people too weak to handle their own problems, seeking professional help, seemed almost impossible. It's been rough, Dad admitted. The first therapist didn't last. Your mother stormed out when he suggested she had control issues. But this new one, Dr. Winters, somehow got through. They've been meeting weekly since August. I'd absorbed the information cautiously, having learned that hope could be dangerous where my mother was concerned, but subtle signs of change began appearing. My birthday card in September came addressed from both parents, but contained a handwritten note from my mother that lacked her usual passive-aggressive subtext. Wishing you happiness on your birthday. The hydrangeas you always loved are blooming in the garden. No mentions of my absence or guilt trips about family traditions, just a simple acknowledgement of the day and a shared memory. In October, my father visited Portland alone, a first in my parents' 40-year marriage. We spent a weekend touring the city, having conversations deeper than any in my memory. I failed you, Vada, he said over dinner our last night together. I thought by keeping the peace I was helping everyone, but I was just enabling her behavior and letting you take the brunt of it. I should have protected you better. You were caught in it too, Dad, I replied, reaching for his hand across the table. Mom's control affected all of us. She's different now, he said tentatively. Not completely changed, that would be too much to expect. But she's trying. Dr. Winters has her reading books about narcissistic parenting patterns and generational trauma. She's starting to see how her own mother shaped her approach to parenting. I nodded, cautiously optimistic but wary. That's good to hear. But I need more than words to trust again. The true test came in early December, when a thick envelope arrived with my mother's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a 5-page letter unlike any I'd ever received from her. Dear Vada, it began. This letter has taken me months to write, and I've rewritten it dozens of times. There's no easy way to say this. I was wrong. Not just about Christmas last year, but about so many things throughout your life. I had to stop reading several times, overwhelmed by the rawness of her words. She acknowledged specific incidents criticizing my 8th grade art project until I cried, belittling my first journalism award, manipulating my college choices through financial control. She named her behaviors clearly controlling, dismissive, emotionally manipulative. I won't ask for your forgiveness, she wrote near the end. I haven't earned it, but I want you to know that I'm trying to understand why I treated my own daughter this way. My therapist is helping me see how my own mother's conditional love warped my understanding of parenting. It doesn't excuse what I've done, but perhaps it explains some of it. The letter concluded without demands or expectations. If you ever feel ready to have any form of contact, I would welcome it on whatever terms you set. If that never happens, I will understand and respect your decision. I shared the letter with Dr. Madison during our now monthly video session. This appears to show genuine insight and accountability, she observed. That's significant progress if it's sincere. But how do I know if it's real or just another manipulation? I asked. She's been convincingly sorry before, only to revert to old patterns. Trust is rebuilt slowly through consistent actions over time, Dr. Madison replied. You don't have to decide everything now. Consider what a first small step might look like if you wanted to test these waters. After considerable thought and discussion with Lucas, I decided to respond with a brief email acknowledging her letter and suggesting a video call after the holidays. Her reply was prompt, but not pressuring, expressing appreciation for my willingness to communicate without pushing for more. As our wedding plans progressed for the following spring, the question of family involvement became unavoidable. Would my parents attend? Would my father walk me down the aisle? Could my mother behave appropriately without making the day about her feelings? What do you want truly? Lucas asked one evening as we discussed the guest list. Not what you think you should want, or what would make others comfortable. What would make this day right for you? After deep reflection, I realized I wanted a chance at reconciliation, but with firm boundaries. I called my father and explained my terms. They were welcome to attend the wedding, but any manipulative behavior or guilt trips would result in them being asked to leave. My father would not give me away. That tradition implied a transfer of ownership I rejected. I would walk down the aisle alone, choosing my own path, as I had this past year. The most healing moment came during our first video call with my mother in January. With Lucas beside me for support, I faced the woman who had dominated my life for so long. She looked older, humbler somehow. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," she began, none of her usual confident authority present in her voice. "I've missed you terribly." The conversation was awkward at first, careful on both sides. But when the topic turned to my wedding plans, something remarkable happened. My mother started to offer her opinion about floral arrangements, then visibly caught herself. "I'm sorry that's not my place," she said. "This is your wedding. What are you thinking for flowers?" It was a small moment but monumental in its significance, the first time I could remember her consciously stopping herself from controlling my choices. We ended the call with plans for another the following month. Not a full restoration of our relationship, but a cautious first step towards something new, something healthier. As I reflect now on this journey, I recognize that sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. My mother's cruel words at that Christmas dinner table, "You're dead to me," had indeed killed something, the unhealthy pattern of seeking approval I could never earn. In its place, something stronger had grown: self-respect, boundaries, and the courage to define my own worth. The person I was a year ago had to die to my mother's expectations to truly live as myself. And in a strange way, the mother she had been needed to experience the death of her control to begin becoming someone capable of genuine love. True healing isn't about forgetting past hurts or pretending they never happened. It's about learning from them, setting boundaries to prevent new wounds, and deciding consciously what relationship is possible moving forward. For anyone listening who recognizes their own story and mine, please know this: you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Creating distance from toxic relationships isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. And sometimes that distance is the only thing that creates enough space for both people to grow. Has someone ever told you that you were dead to them? Or have you had to create distance from toxic relationships in your own life? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories of healing and growth. Thank you for walking this journey with me, and remember that your worth is inherent, not something anyone else can grant or take away.